scripture this morning, we're going back to the beginning. Genesis chapter 12, beginning with the first verse. Listen for a word from God. Now the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." So Abram went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took his wife Sarai and his brother's son Lot, and all the possessions that they had gathered, and the persons whom they had acquired in Haran. And they set forth to go to the land of Canaan. When they had come to the land of Canaan, Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. At that time the Canaanites were in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he moved on to the hill country on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and invoked the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on by stages toward the Negev. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Well, we launched our stewardship campaign this last week. As I mentioned earlier, you should have received a letter or two by now. What shall we bring? As you can see on the front of the bulletin is our theme this year. What shall we bring of our lives, our resources, our possessions? What shall we bring to God is the call of God to all of us. And so begins our stewardship season with the call of Abram and Sarah. Chapter 12 of this first book of the Bible represents a shift in the story. Prior to this chapter, we have the stories of God creating the world and all that's in it, including humanity. God creates on a cosmic level, and then in the flood story, we read that God destroys on a cosmic level as well. And now the story shifts to the specific of God focusing on a particular people, a particular family. We don't know much about Abram and Sarai until God calls them. Abram is mentioned briefly in the previous chapter in the genealogy of one of Noah's sons. He moved from Ur in latter-day Babylonia to Haran in latter-day Assyria with his father, Terah, who is said to have been a maker of idols. And this is the household that Abram comes from. In our text today, we find out that Abram is old. He's married to Sarai. They have no children, and it's assumed that Sarai is barren. He has a nephew, though, named Lot. We don't know if Abram's brother, Lot's father, is alive or not. We don't know what work Abram did, what skills he has, what are his characteristics. Nothing. He doesn't seem to be a person of any consequence at all. No larger-than-life personality, no slaying of giants, no leading of peoples, no significance whatsoever. Just an old man and his wife. This is who God calls to be the parents of a great nation and the promise of blessing, land, and descendants. As far as we can tell, he responded to God's call without question. He packed up his wife, his nephew, and seemingly some slaves and servants, persons he'd acquired in Haran, the text said, and set out as God called. This is a sign of trust. Hearing God's call and picking up and following that call wherever it takes you. Did he ask Sarai, "What shall we bring?" Perhaps not, because the text take it all with them. Not quite the kind of pack rats we are today, I'm sure. Our beloved co-founder of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, the big rhetorical writer who loved to debate and talk and write to extent, Alexander Campbell, said this of Abraham's call: "There was nothing more extraordinary ever believed by any man than that he, an old man, 99 years old, and his wife 90, who had in her youth and through all the years of parturition, bearing children, had been barren, should by this woman became the father of many nations, and have a progeny as innumerable as the countless myriads of the host of heaven. This was contrary to nature. When Abraham considered his own body as good as dead to these matters, and when he looked at the poor, wrinkled, shriveled, and drooping old Sarah, and thought that they too, old and faded as they were, should become the parents of immense nations, it transcended all the powers of reason to believe it upon any other premises than the omnipotence and inviolate truth and faithfulness of God. To these he gave glory and rested assured that God would make good his promise." The distinguishing peculiarity of Abraham's belief was that, contrary to all evidence from the reason and nature of things, he embraced with undoubting confidence the promise, obviating all the arguments against his confidence, arising from nature and the common lot of men, by the power and common lot of men, by the power and faithfulness of God. There's a lot packed in there, don't you think? Well, in other words, let's put it simply. Abraham believed God and trusted God's call, despite all logic, reason, or evidence to the contrary, that God would follow through on the promise of blessing to him and his descendants. That there would even be descendants in his advanced age. Now, there are a few interesting bits of information about this call that I want to share with you. First, it's unlike any other biblical call where the called drop everything, leave everything and everyone behind to follow the call. Not here. This one's different. Abraham takes with him his family and belongings. Second, you might have noticed that God blessed Abraham, not for his sake, or even for the sake of his family, but for the sake of the world. Abraham and Sarah waited many long years for that promised son. Abraham didn't even get to own any of that promised land except for the burial plot that he purchased for Sarah, where Abraham himself would eventually be buried. Third, you may have already realized that God promises blessing to Abram not because of anything Abram had done to deserve it. He didn't somehow earn a special blessing from God. Abram and Sarai were blessed by God simply to be a blessing to others. You might recall that later on in the story, their great-grandson, Joseph, will save Egypt and the surrounding nations from starving in a devastating famine. And that's what I want to focus on for the rest of our time together today. Blessing. Undeserved. Unmerited. Grace. Given not for our own sake, but for the sake of others. That was the life of Abraham and Sarah, late in their lives. And it was the eventual resultant great nation of Israel's blessing, called into existence to be a light to the nations, witnesses to God's glory and goodness. And then the grand fulfillment of God's blessing embodied in the person of Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ, who came to be a light to the world. It's the stewardship of our lives, listening for God's call, to be a blessing for others, a witness to the life of faith in God, following in the ways of Christ. What shall we bring? You should have received a mandala as you came in today with your bulletin. A mandala. What blessings do you have? Bless you. Bless you. There we go. Good cue. When I was ordained to Christian ministry, one of the ordination gifts given to me was a basket of small children's toys, along with a card reminding me to not get too lost in the busyness of ministry that I forget to have fun. Like a child. A lot easier said than done, for sure, but that reminder has stayed with me all these years. You have before you that mandala, a sheet of blank spaces for you to write in your blessings. Remembering that we are blessed to be a blessing to others, I invite you to explore how God has blessed your life. Not just with things, but with skills and passions and abilities and resources and whatever else you consider to be blessings in your life. After you've filled in the blank spaces, I invite you to pray over each of those blessings that you list, asking God how you might put that blessing to use for the good of others. How can you use your blessings in the ministry of Monte Vista Christian Church, in service to others, in justice-seeking ways, in faith-nurturing ways, in life-giving ways? You see, stewardship isn't just about how we spend our money. It's about how we spend our lives. It's how we spend our blessings. It's how we spend our time. When you finish writing in all your blessings and praying about how God can use them, remember to do the fun part. Find some crayons or coloring pencils. There's a bunch of those right there in our children's playground space. Pick up some colors and color your mandala. Place it in a location where you'll see it every day. This is an invitation for all ages of all of us. Put it in a place you'll see it every day and allow it to invite you into a time of prayer and contemplation about those blessings, about why you've been given those blessings, and what God is calling you to do with them. Listen. What is God calling you to do? What is God calling Monte Vista Christian Church to do? Are you willing to follow God's call wherever it takes you? Are you even able to hear God's call with all the noise of the world around us? Abraham and Sarah's call and blessing reminds us that God calls and blesses all of us, regardless of our age, our gender, ability, skills, or anything else, all for the sake of others. Are we willing to take a leap of faith into an unknown future, trusting God to guide and provide just as Abram and Sarah did? To guide our lives just as God guided Abram and Sarah's life. Lives that are ones to become stewards of others. To have lives in service to others as stewardship lives. What shall we bring with us on this journey that God is calling us to take? Listen for God's call. Listen for God's voice. And then be willing to take that first step to serve others out of the blessings that you gracious God, we thank you that you are in our lives, blessing us with your presence and with opportunities to be a blessing to others. Open our eyes and our hearts and our lives, that we will hear your call and respond as you would have us to serve. In Christ's name.